How are you today? I'm sorry I'm late. Oh, that's dead. I just realized there's gonna be a time where it's gonna get dark at 9:30 at night. Will you wait? Seriously, wait. She's so eager to get up here. This is all I see is something hopping on the corner of my eye. Sometimes it gets on your nerves. And I already told her to wait. You gotta wait. Gotta be good girl. Okay? Gotta be good girl. That's only when you get privileges. Okay? Sorry about that. Let's just get rid of that. We just mute this for 1 minute. Okie dokie. So let's get started. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us for our trespasses. Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for another beautiful day on your beautiful earth. And thank you for allowing us to wake up today. And thank you for what you did for us in the past, present, and what you will do for us in the future. Thank you so much for you, Jehovah. I really appreciate you. Good morning, Carol. I almost said Rachel. I don't know why. So, please continue to help Danielle, Tate, Cindy Lee, Lisa, King Charles. I'm sorry. Please help Danielle, who's getting her strength back, and continue to help the people that have cancer. Tate has a heart condition as well. Tate, Cindy Lee, Lisa, King Charles, Princess Kate, Jed's friend Shannon, Danielle Fischel, also known as Topanga, Please help them, give them physical and mental strength to fight off their diseases. Please give Danielle physical and mental strength to fight off whatever she's trying to fight off. Celine Dion, stiff person syndrome. Jenny with all her ailments. Christina for her daughter's pregnancy. Tiffany with her mental and physical health, as well as her son. Robin Taylor, physical and mental health as well. Miss Diane and daughters. Arnie, Vicky and family, Carol and mom. Give them all physical and mental strength to get through whatever they need to get through and to fight off their diseases. In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord, amen. Ivy, lay down. Put your head down. Put your head down. Ivy, put your head down. Come on. She will in time. Okay. She won't put her head down. She goes, I'm not going to put my head down. And that's that. Sassy teenager. First Corinthians. Carol, we're going to do your verse request now, okay? So you will hear it. What are you looking at? She's like staring at me. What? Yeah, put your head down, baby. All right, the verse of the day is 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 34. Come on, just lay down, please. Oh, it's First Chronicles. First Chronicles. Dummy. First. All right, the verse of the day is not for First Corinthians. It's First Chronicles. Oh my God! It's just Chronicles. First Chronicles. I don't think there's a first or a second Chronicle. Oh, there is. Oh boy. First Chronicles, chapter 1. No, chapter 16, verse 34. So verse 16. Here we go. Sorry about that. So First Chronicles chapter 16, verse 34. Give thanks to Jehovah, for he is good. His loyal love endures forever. Amen to that. That's a good one, Carol. How's that? Okay, Carol. First verse of the day, I'm gonna do it again. Is First Chronicles, chapter 16, verse 34. Give thanks to Jehovah, for he is good. His loyal love endures forever. Now we'll do our Bible reading. It's 1 Samuel chapter 15 through 21. I know you're going to eventually get caught up with what I'm saying, Carol. I did read the right passage. Put your head down. You're in the way. You don't want to lay down. Okay, okay, okay. I'm not going to argue with you.
Chapter 15.
Who's that?
Then Samuel said to Saul, Jehovah sent me to anoint you as king over his people Israel. Now listen to what Jehovah has to say. This is what Jehovah of armies says. I will call to account the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they opposed them along their way coming up from Egypt. Now go and strike down the Amalekites and devote them to destruction, along with all that they have. You must not spare them. You are to put them to death, man as well as woman, child as well as infant, bull as well as sheep, camel as well as donkey. Saul summoned the people and counted them at Telaim. There were 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. Saul advanced as far as the city of Amalek and set an ambush by the valley. Saul then said to the Kenites,
Go, depart from among the Amalekites, so that I do not sweep you away with them. For you showed loyal love to all the people of Israel at the time they came up out of Egypt.
So the Kenites departed from the midst of Amalek. After that, Saul struck down the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is next to Egypt. He caught Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, but all the other people he devoted to destruction with the sword. However, Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the flock, the herd, the fattened animals, the rams, and all that was good. They did not want to devote them to destruction. But all the goods that were worthless and unwanted, these they devoted to destruction. Then the word of Jehovah came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned away from following me, and he has not carried out my words. Samuel became very upset, and he kept crying out to Jehovah all night long. When Samuel got up early in the morning to meet Saul, Samuel was told,
Saul went to Carmel, and there he erected a monument for himself. Then he turned around and went down to Gilgal.
When Samuel finally came to him, Saul said to him,
May Jehovah bless you. I have carried out the word of Jehovah.
But Samuel said, Then what is the sound of the flock in my ears, and the sound of the cattle that I hear? To this Saul said,
They were brought from the Amalekites, because the people spared the best of the flock and the herd for sacrificing them to Jehovah your God. But what was left, we devoted to destruction.
At this Samuel said to Saul, Stop! Let me tell you what Jehovah said to me last night. So he said to him, Speak. Samuel continued, Were you not insignificant in your own eyes when you were made head of the tribes of Israel, and when Jehovah anointed you as king over Israel? Jehovah later sent you on a mission and said, Go and devote the sinful Amalekites to destruction. Fight against them until you have exterminated them. So why did you not obey the voice of Jehovah? Instead, you rushed greedily toward the spoil and did what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah. However, Saul said to Samuel,
But I have obeyed the voice of Jehovah. I went on the mission to which Jehovah sent me, and I brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and I devoted the Amalekites to destruction. But the people took sheep and cattle from the spoil, the best of what was devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to Jehovah your God at Gilgal.
Samuel then said, Does Jehovah take as much pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of Jehovah? Look, to obey is better than a sacrifice, and to pay attention than the fat of rams. For rebelliousness is the same as the sin of divination, and pushing ahead presumptuously the same as using magical power and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Jehovah, he has rejected you from being king. Then Saul said to Samuel,
I have sinned, for I have obeyed the order of Jehovah in your words, because I feared the people and listened to what they said. And now, please, pardon my sin, and return with me, so that I may bow down to Jehovah.
But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of Jehovah, and Jehovah has rejected you from continuing as king over Israel. As Samuel was turning to go, Saul grabbed hold of the hem of his sleeveless coat. This Samuel said to him, Jehovah has ripped away the royal rule of Israel from you today, and he will give it to one of your fellow men who is better than you. Moreover, the excellency of Israel will not prove false or change his mind, for he is not a mere man that he should change his mind. At this he said,
I have sinned, but honor me, please, in front of the elders of my people and in front of Israel. Return with me, and I will bow down to Jehovah your God.
So Samuel returned behind Saul, and Saul bowed down to Jehovah. And Samuel said, Bring Agag, the king of Amalek, near to me. Then Agag went to him reluctantly. Himself, surely the threat of death is past. However, Samuel said, Just as your sword has bereaved women of children, so your mother will be most bereaved among women. With that, Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before Jehovah at Gilgal. Samuel now went to Ramah. Saul went up to his own house at Gibeah of Saul. Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, for Samuel went into mourning for Saul. And Jehovah regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel.
They don't.
Chapter 16. Jehovah eventually said to Samuel, How long will you mourn for Saul, now that I have rejected him from ruling as king over Israel?
Put your head down.
Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, because I have selected from among his sons a king for myself. But Samuel said, How can I go? When Saul hears about it, he will kill me. Jehovah replied, Take a young cow with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to Jehovah. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice. Then I will make known to you what to do. You must anoint for me the one whom I designate to you. Samuel did what Jehovah said. When he came to Bethlehem, the elders of the city were trembling at meeting him. And they said,
Does your coming mean peace?
To this he said, It means peace. I have come to sacrifice to Jehovah. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. Then he sanctified Jesse and his sons, after which he summoned them to the sacrifice. As they came in, and he saw Eliab, he said, Surely here before Jehovah stands his anointed one. But Jehovah said to Samuel, Do not pay attention to his appearance and how tall he is, for I have rejected him. For the way man sees is not the way God sees, because mere man sees what appears to the eyes, but Jehovah sees into the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass before Samuel. But he said, Jehovah has not chosen this one either. Next, Jesse presented Shammah, but he said, Jehovah has not chosen this one either. So Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, Jehovah has not chosen any of these. Finally, Samuel said to Jesse, Are these all of your boys? To this he said,
The youngest has been left out until now. He is pasturing the sheep.
Then Samuel said to Jesse, Send for him, because we will not sit down for the meal until he comes here. So he sent for him and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, with beautiful eyes and handsome in appearance. Then Jehovah said, Get up, anoint him, for this is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And the Spirit of Jehovah began to empower David from that day forward. Samuel later rose and went his way to Ramah. Now the Spirit of Jehovah had departed from Saul, and the bad spirit from Jehovah terrorized him. The servants of Saul said to him,
You see that a bad spirit from God is terrorizing you. Let our Lord please command your servants before you to look for a man who is skilled at playing the harp. Whenever a bad spirit from God comes upon you, he will play it, and you will feel better.
So Saul said to his servants,
Find me, please, a man who plays well, and bring him to me.
One of the attendants said,
Look, I have seen how a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite plays skillfully, and he is a courageous, mighty warrior. He can speak well, and he is handsome, and Jehovah is with him.
Saul then sent messengers to Jesse and said,
Send to me your son David, who is with the flock.
So Jesse loaded a donkey with bread, a skin bottle of wine, and a young goat, and sent them to Saul with his son David. David came to Saul and began serving him. Saul grew to love him very much, and he became his armor-bearer. Saul sent a message to Jesse,
Please let David remain in my service.
Whenever a bad spirit from God came upon Saul, David took the harp and played it, and Saul found relief and felt better, and the bad spirit would depart from him. Chapter 17. And the Philistines assembled their armies for war. They assembled at Soko, which belongs to Judah, and they camped between Soko and Azekah, and Ephes-dammim. Saul and the men of Israel assembled and camped in the valley of Elah, and they drew up in battle formation to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied the mountain on one side, and the Israelites occupied the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. Then a champion came out from the camps of the Philistines. His name was Goliath, from Gath, and his height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of copper on his head, and he was wearing a coat of mail that was 5,000 shekels. He had shin guards of copper on his legs, and a javelin of copper slung between his shoulders. The wooden shaft of his spear was like the beam of loom workers, and the iron blade of his spear weighed 600 shekels, and his shield-bearer was marching ahead of him. Then he stood and called out to the battle line of Israel and said to them,
Why have you come out to draw up in battle formation? Am I not the Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and strike me down, we will then become your servants. But if I prevail against him and strike him down, you will become our servants and serve us.
The Philistine then said,
I do taunt the battle line of Israel this day. Give me a man, and let us fight it out.
When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they became terrified and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite from Bethlehem of Judah named Jesse, and who in the days of Saul was already an old man. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the war. The names of his 3 sons who went to war were Eliab, the firstborn, his second son Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 oldest followed Saul. David was going back and forth from Saul to tend the sheep of his father at Bethlehem. Meanwhile, the Philistine would come forward and take his position each morning and each evening for 40 days. Then Jesse said to his son David,
Take, please, this ephah of roasted grain, and these 10 loaves of bread, and carry them quickly to your brothers in the camp. And take these 10 portions of cheese to the chief of the 1,000. Also, you should check on the welfare of your brothers, and bring back some token from them.
They were with Saul and all the other men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David got up early in the morning and left someone in charge of the sheep. Then he packed up and went, just as Jesse had commanded him. When he came to the camp enclosure, the army was going out to the battle line, shouting a battle cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up, so that one battle line faced the other battle line. David immediately left his baggage in the care of the baggage.
Carol, you gotta tell me when you're gonna leave. Because I already read your day you gave me. I read it before I started the reading. I figured I'd say it early so you can hear it. But please next time tell me that you're leaving so I don't do the reading too soon so because I wanted you to hear it. You really should tell me when you're leaving. But welcome back.
Keeper and ran to the battle line. When he arrived, he began asking about the welfare of his brothers. While he was speaking with them, there came the champion named Goliath, the Philistine from Gath. He came out from the battle line of the Philistines, and he spoke the same words as before, and David heard him. When all the men of Israel saw the man, they fled from him, terrified. The men of Israel were saying,
Have you seen this man who is coming out? He comes to taunt Israel. The king will give great riches to the man who strikes him down. He will give him his own daughter, and he will give the house of his father exemption in Israel.
David began to say to the men who were standing near him,
What will be done for the man who strikes down that Philistine over there and takes away reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should taunt the battle line of the living God?
Then the people told him the same thing as before.
This is what will be done for the man who strikes him down.
When his oldest brother, Eliab, heard him speak to the men, he became angry with David and said,
Why have you down? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I well know your presumptuousness and the bad intentions of your heart. You came down just to see the battle.
To this, David said,
What have I done now? I was only asking a question.
So he turned from him towards someone else and asked the same thing as before, and the people gave him the same reply as before. The words that David had spoken were overheard and reported to Saul. So he sent for him. David said to Saul,
Let no one lose heart because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine.
But Saul said to David,
You are not able to go fight against this Philistine, for you are but a boy, and he has been a
You're
soldier
welcome.
from his youth.
David then said to Saul,
Your servant became a shepherd of his father's flock, and a lion came, also a bear, and each carried off a sheep from the flock. I went out after it and struck it down and rescued it from its mouth. When it rose up against me, I grabbed it by its fur and struck it down and death. Your servant struck down both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will become like one of them, for he has taunted the battles of the living God.
Then David added,
Jehovah, who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear, he is the one who will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine.
At this, Saul said to David,
Go, and may Jehovah be with you.
Saul now clothed David with his garments. He put a copper helmet on his head, after which he clothed him with a coat of mail. Then David strapped on his sword over his garments and tried to go, but could not, for he was not used to them. David said to Saul,
I am unable to go in these things, for I am not used to them.
So David took them off. He then took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the stream bed and placed them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and his sling was in his hand. And he began approaching the Philistine. The Philistine came closer and closer to David, and his shield-bearer was ahead of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he sneered at him in contempt because he was just a ruddy and handsome boy. So the Philistine said to David,
Am I a dog, so that you are coming against me with sticks?
With that, the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David,
Just come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the heavens and to the beasts of the field.
David replied to the Philistine,
You are coming against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I am coming against you in the name of Jehovah of armies, the God of the battle line of Israel, whom you have taunted. This very day Jehovah will surrender you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut your head. And on this day I will give the corpses of the camp of the Philistines to the heavens and to the wild beasts of the earth. And people of all the earth will know that there is a God in Israel. And all those gathered here will know that it is not with the sword or the spear that Jehovah saves, for the battle belongs to Jehovah, and he will give all of you into our hand.
Then the Philistine rose and drew steadily closer to meet David. But David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David thrust his hand into his bag and took a stone from there and slung it. He struck the Philistine in the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David prevailed with a sling and a stone. He struck down the Philistine and put him to death, though there was no sword in David's hand. David continued running and stood over him. Then he took hold of the Philistine's sword and pulled it out of its sheath and made sure that he was dead by cutting off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their mighty one had died, they fled. At that, the men of Israel and of Judah rose and broke into shouting and pursued the Philistines all the way from the valley to the gates of Ekron. And the slain of the Philistines lay fallen along the road from Shaaraim as far as Gath and Ekron. After the Israelites returned from hotly pursuing the Philistines, they pillaged their camps. Then David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. At the moment that Saul saw David go out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, the chief of the army,
Whose son is this boy, Abner?
Abner replied,
As surely as you live, O king, I do not know.
The king said,
Find out whose son the young man is.
So as soon as David returned from striking down the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with the head of the Philistine in his hand. Saul now said to him,
Whose son are you, boy?
To which David said,
The son of your servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite.
Chapter 18. As soon as David had finished speaking to Saul, Jonathan and David became bound together in close friendship, and Jonathan began to love him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him, and he did not allow him to return to his father's house. And Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the sleeveless coat that he wore and gave it to David, along with his gear, his sword, his bow, and his belt. David began going out, and was successful wherever Saul would send him. So Saul put him in charge of the fighting men, and this pleased all the people and the servants of Saul. When David and the others would return from striking down the Philistines, the women would come out from all the cities of Israel with song and dances to meet King Saul with tambourines, with rejoicing, and with lutes. The women who were celebrating would sing,
Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his tens of thousands.
Saul became very angry, and this song, for he said,
They have credited David with tens of thousands, but to me They have credited thousands. The only thing left to give him is the kingship.
From that day on, Saul was always looking at David suspiciously. The next day, a bad spirit from God gripped Saul, and he started to act strangely inside the house while David was playing music on the harp, as on other occasions. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled the spear, saying to himself,
I will pin David to the wall.
But David escaped from him twice. Then Saul was afraid of David, because Jehovah was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and appointed him as chief of 1,000, and David would lead the army into battle. David continued to have success in all he did, and Jehovah was with him. And when Saul saw that he was very successful, he became afraid. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he would lead them in their campaigns. Saul later said to David,
Here is my oldest daughter, Merab. I will give her to you as a wife. However, you should continue to display your courage for me and fight the wars of Jehovah.
For Saul said to himself,
Do not let my hand come against him. Let the hand of the Philistines strike him.
At this David said to Saul,
Who am I? And who are my relatives, my father's family in Israel, for me to become son-in-law to the king?
From the time to give Saul's daughter Merab to David, she had already been given to be the wife of Adriel, the Maholathite. Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and it was reported to Saul, and this pleased him. So Saul said,
I will give her to him to serve as a snare to him, so that the hand of the Philistines may come upon him.
Saul then said to David a second time,
You will form a marriage alliance with me today.
Further, Saul ordered his servants,
Speak to David secretly and say,
Just went off. Let me go see how much we actually lost. Let me go to my live stream.
Why would you call anyone else after a car accident? We've been right.
Michelle.
said to David a second time, You will form a...
See how much.
Speak to David secretly and say,
It's wonderful. Let me go see. We'll just start this one over. Wait a minute. Did that jump ahead? We'll just start this one over. It's wonderful.
Saul ordered his servants,
Speak to David
22.
secretly and say,
Yeah, it jumped ahead. Oh, you guys missed a bunch. So let's go back here. It shows that it stopped here. Oh, I think. Oh, this is all messed up. See how much we actually lost. It's winnable.
And the servant is a snare to him, so that the hand of the Philistines may come upon him.
Saul then said to David a second time,
You will form a marriage alliance with me today.
Further, Saul ordered his servants,
Speak to David secretly and say,
It's winnable. Let me go see how much we actually lost. This is something. And it's here. Oh, it's right here that it left over. Oh, okay. Okay, I got confused.
Further, Saul ordered his servants,
Speak to David secretly and say, Look, the king is pleased with you, and all his servants are fond of you. So now form a marriage alliance with the king.
When Saul's servants told David these things, David said,
Is it a trivial matter to you to form a marriage alliance with the king, when I am a man poor and lightly esteemed?
Then Saul's servants reported to him.
These are the words that David spoke.
At that, Saul said,
This is what you should say to David. The king does not want any bride price, except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to take revenge on the enemies of the king.
For Saul was scheming to have David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So his servants reported these words to David, and David to form a marriage alliance with the king. Before the allotted time, David went with his men and struck down 200 Philistine men, and David brought the full number of their foreskins to the king to form a marriage alliance with the king. Therefore Saul gave him his daughter Michal as a wife. Saul realized that Jehovah was with David, and that his daughter Michal loved him. This made Saul even more afraid of David, and Saul became an enemy of David for the rest of his life. The princes of the Philistines would go out to battle, but as often as they went out, David was more successful than all the servants of Saul, and his name was highly esteemed.
Oh. I got so confused. Sorry about
Chapter
the
19.
inconvenience.
Saul later spoke to Jonathan his son and all his servants about putting David to death.
Hold on, I just realized something.
Since Saul's son Jonathan was very fond of David, Jonathan told David,
My father Saul wants to have you put to death. Please be on your guard in the morning and go to a secret place and remain hidden. I will go out and stand next to my father in the field where you will be. I will talk about you to my father, and if I learn anything, I will be sure to tell you.
So Jonathan spoke well of David to his father Saul. He said to him,
The king should not sin against his servant David, for he has not sinned against you, and what he has done for you has benefited you. He risked his life to strike down the Philistine, so that Jehovah brought about a great victory for all Israel. You saw it, and you were overjoyed. So why should you sin against innocent blood in having David put to death for no reason?
Saul listened to Jonathan, and Saul swore,
As surely as Jehovah is living, he will not be put
Oh,
to
yeah.
death.
Afterward, Jonathan called David and told him all these things. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he continued to serve him as before. In time, war broke out again, and David went out and fought against the Philistines and struck them down with a great slaughter, and they fled from before him. And a bad spirit from Jehovah came upon Saul when he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand, while David was playing music on the harp. Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul, who drove the spear into the wall. David fled and escaped during that night. Saul later sent messengers to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But David's wife Michal told him,
If you do not escape tonight, tomorrow you will be a dead man.
Immediately Michal let David down through the window so that he could run away and escape. Michal took the teraphim statue and placed it on the bed, and she put a net of goat hair at the place of his head, and she covered it with a garment. Saul now sent messengers to take David, but she said,
He is sick.
So Saul sent the messengers to see David and told them,
Bring him to me on his bed to have him put to death.
When the messengers came in, there was the teraphim statue on the bed and a net of goat hair where his head would have been. Saul said to Michal,
Why did you trick me like this and send my enemy away so that he could escape?
Michal replied to Saul,
He said to me, Send me away, or I will kill you.
Now David had run away and escaped, and he came to Samuel at Ramah. He told him all that Saul had done to him. Then he and Samuel went away, and they stayed in Naioth. In time it was reported to Saul,
Look, David is in Naioth, in Ramah.
At once Saul sent messengers to seize David. When they saw the elderly ones of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing and presiding over them, the Spirit of God came to be upon Saul's messengers, and they began behaving as prophets as well. When they told it to Saul, he immediately sent other messengers, and they too began behaving as prophets. So Saul sent messengers again, a third group, and they too began behaving as prophets. Finally, he also went to Ramah. When he reached the great cistern that is in Sikhu, he asked,
Where are Samuel and David?
Okay.
They replied,
There, in Naioth, in Ramah.
While Saul was on his way from there to Naioth and Ramah, the Spirit of God came upon him as well, and he walked along behaving as a prophet until he came into Naioth and Ramah. He also stripped off his garments, and he too behaved as a prophet before Samuel. And he lay there naked all that day and all that night. That is why they say, Is Saul also among the prophets?
Oh. Yeah, maybe.
Chapter 20. Then David ran away from Naioth and Ramah. However, he came to Jonathan and said,
What have I done? What is my offense? And how have I sinned against your father for him to seek my life?
At this Jonathan said to him,
It is unthinkable. You will not die. Look, my father will not do anything, great or small, without disclosing it to me. Why should my father hide this matter from me? This will not happen.
But David swore further and said,
Your father surely knows that I have found favor in your eyes, and would say, Do not let Jonathan know this, or he will be upset. But as surely as Jehovah is living, and as surely as you are living, there is only a step between me and death.
Then Jonathan said to David,
Whatever you say, I will do for you.
David said to Jonathan,
Tomorrow is the new moon, and I am certainly expected to sit with the king to eat. You must send me away, and I will hide in the field until the evening on the third day. If your father misses me at all, then say, David begged me for permission to go quickly to his city Bethlehem, because there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. If his response is, That is fine, it means peace to your servant. But if he becomes angry, you can be sure that he is determined to harm me. Show loyal love to your servant, for you have brought your servant into Jehovah's covenant with you. But if I am guilty, put me to death yourself. Why turn me over to your father?"
To this, Jonathan said,
It is unthinkable to suggest that about you. If I learn that my father is determined to harm you, would I not tell you?
Then David said to Jonathan,
"Who will tell me whether your father gives you a harsh answer?"
Jonathan said to David,
Come, let us go out into the field.
So both of them went out into the field. And Jonathan said to David,
Let Jehovah, the God of Israel, be a witness that I will sound out my father about this time tomorrow or by the third day. If he is favorably disposed toward David, will I not then send you word and disclose it to you? But if my father intends to harm you, may Jehovah do that and more to Jonathan if I do not disclose it to you and send you away in peace. May Jehovah be with you, just as he was with my father. And will you not show me the loyal love of Jehovah while I am alive and even when I die? Never withdraw your loyal love from my household, even when Jehovah wipes out all the enemies of David from the face of the earth.
So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying,
Jehovah will require it and call David's enemies to account.
So Jonathan had David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan then said to him,
Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed, for your seat will be vacant. By the third day, you will be missed even more, and you must go to the place where you hid the other day, and stay near the stone here. I will then shoot 3 arrows to one side of it, as though I were shooting at a target. When I send the attendant, I will say, Go, find the arrows. If I say to the attendant, Look, the arrows are on this side of you, get them. Then you may come back, for as surely as Jehovah is living, it means everything is peaceful for you, and there is no danger. But if I should say to the boy, Look, the arrows are beyond you, then go, for Jehovah has sent you away. As for the promise that we have made, you and I, may Jehovah be between us forever.
So David hid in the field. When the new moon came, the king took his seat at the meal to eat. The king was sitting in his usual seat by the wall. Jonathan was facing him, and Abner was sitting at Saul's side, but David's place was vacant. Saul did not say anything that day, for he said to himself,
Something has happened so that he is not clean. Yes, he must be unclean.
And the day after the new moon, on the second day, David's place continued vacant. Saul then said to Jonathan his son,
Why has the son of Jesse not come to the meal either yesterday or today?
Jonathan answered Saul,
David begged me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, Please, permit me to go, because we have a family sacrifice in the city, and my own brother summoned me. So if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me slip away to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table.
Then Saul became enraged with Jonathan, and he said to him,
You son of a rebellious woman, do you think I do not know that you are choosing to side with the son of Jesse, to your own shame and to the shame of your mother? As long as the son of Jesse is alive on the earth, you and your kingship will not be firmly established. So now send someone to bring him to me, or he must die.
However, Jonathan said to Saul, his father,
Why should he be put to death? What has he done?
At that Saul hurled the spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. Jonathan immediately rose up from the table in the heat of anger, and he did not eat any food on the second day after the new moon, for he was upset over David, and his own father had humiliated him. In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for the appointment with David, and a young attendant was with him. And he said to his attendant,
Please run and find the arrows that I shoot.
The attendant ran, and Jonathan shot the arrow beyond him. When the attendant reached the place where Jonathan had shot the arrow, Jonathan called out to the attendant,
Is not the arrow beyond you?
Jonathan called out to the attendant,
Hurry, go quickly, do not delay.
And Jonathan's attendant picked up the arrows and came back to his master. The attendant did not understand anything about the matter. Only Jonathan and David knew what was meant. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his attendant and told him,
Go, take them to the city.
When the attendant left, David rose up from a place nearby that was to the south. Then he fell with his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept for each other. But David wept the most. Jonathan said to David,
Go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of Jehovah, saying, May Jehovah be between you and me, and between your offspring and my offspring forever.
Then David rose up and left, and Jonathan went back to the city. Chapter 21.
Last one.
David later came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech began to tremble when he met David, and he said to him,
Why are you by yourself, and no one is with you?
David replied to Ahimelech the priest,
The king instructed me to do something, but he said, Do not let anyone know anything about the mission on which I am sending you, and about the instructions I have given you. I made an appointment with my young men to meet at a certain place. Now, if there are 5 loaves of bread at your disposal, just give them to me, or whatever is available.
But the priest answered David,
There is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is holy bread, provided that the young men have kept away from women.
David answered the priest,
Women have certainly been kept away from us, as on previous occasions when I went out on a campaign. If the bodies of the young men are holy, even when the mission is ordinary, how much more so today should they be holy?
So the priest gave him the holy bread, because there was no bread there except the showbread, which had been removed from Jehovah's presence to be replaced by fresh bread on the day it was taken away. Now one of Saul's servants was there on that day, detained before Jehovah. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. David then said to Ahimelech,
Is there a spear or a sword here at your disposal? I did not take my own sword or my weapons with me, because the king's mission was urgent.
To this the priest said,
The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you struck down in the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped up in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want to take it for yourself, take it, because it is the only one here.
David said,
There is none like it. Give it to me.
That day David rose up and continued his flight from Saul, and he eventually came to King Achish of Gath. The servants of Achish said to him,
Is this not David, the king of the land? Is he not the one they sang about when they danced, saying, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his tens of thousands?
David took these words to heart, and he became very much afraid of King Achish of Gath. So he disguised his sanity in their presence, and acted insane while among them. He was making marks on the doors of the gate, and letting his saliva run down his beard.
Ew.
Finally Achish said to his servants,
You see that this man is crazy. Why bring him to me? Do I have a shortage of crazy men that I need to have this one acting crazy before me? Should this man enter my house?
Chapter 22.
No. Okay, that is going to be it for today. I will be live later on, but might be later than 10 because I didn't have my breakfast yet. And this went over. So, and then we had, I don't know what happened, it stopped. So, I will see you later. Love, don't judge. Peace out.